Okay. Um, I assume we're being recorded. Okay, now we can start. My name is Alan Essig. I'm a volunteer with the DeKalb County with the DeKalb County Democrats. This is the first of the DeKalb County Democrats monthly webinar series tackling the issues, the important issues of the time, trying to get the kind of the best and brightest of our party to, inform us of various policy issues, what's going down at the Capitol and so forth. Today, we're very fortunate to have Representative Mary Margaret Oliver to kind of talk about the legislative process, how things work down at the Capitol, how folks can have impact and get involved. Um, um, Mary Margaret is a DeKalb County native and a practicing attorney in Decatur. She serves on House District 84, which encompasses part of Decatur, Brookhaven, Tucker, Chamblee, Emory University, unincorporated neighborhoods of Druid Hills, Sagamore Hills, North Briarcliff, and Oak Grove. She has been in the General Assembly over 25 years, served in the House from 87 to 93, in the Senate from 93 to 99. And I realized today that my first session as staff in the Senate was 1993. So I've known Mary Margaret for 33 years and been in the House from 2003 till the present. So she has been on both sides of the aisle as both in the majority and the minority. Mary Margaret's seen it all. She currently serves as Secretary of the Public and Community Health Committee. She has also serves in the Appropriations Subcommittee on Human Resources, the Government Affairs, Judiciary Juvenile, MARTOC, and Technology and Infrastructure Innovation Committees. So she's, been around, knows everything, and will be a great help in the conversation today. Um, I guess one of the first things I want to do is kind of give an overview of the legislative process. I mean, some folks on the call will be very familiar with it. They probably live down at the Capitol. Other folks on the call, may have never been down there, may not understand how the process works. So I've kind of very quickly want to go through. Um, there we go. And I do apologize. I am not the most technically savvy person. So as we're doing this, um, so I don't know how to get rid of this. I do apologize. Um, the Georgia, the bills are introduced in the legislature. It's assigned to a committee for more detailed discussion. It's voted out of the legislature, and then it goes to the governor. A more detailed look is, a bill is introduced. I apologize. I'm afraid if I click that, okay. Um, a legislator will introduce a bill. It'll be written by legislative council. It'll be introduced into either the House or the Senate, depending on where they are. It goes through several readings in the chamber. It is then assigned to a committee. The committee process starts where they have hearings on the bill. Not every bill gets a hearing. Some bills, basically end up in committee and never get a hearing. Um, the bills that get hearings will get, either voted out or killed in committee. It'll then go to the Rules Committee, which sets the agenda for the floor of the House and the Senate. And once it hits the floor, it'll be voted on, and either passes or not passes. It'll then go to the other chamber. If it's a House bill, it'll go to the Senate chamber. If it's a Senate bill, it'll go to the House chamber. Um, it then goes through the same process in that chamber. If the bill passes as passed by the other chamber, it then gets sent to the governor. If it's passed and it's in the end, but a change is made, it goes to what's called a conference committee, where the lieutenant governor appoints 3 members, the speaker appoints 3 members, and they hash out a compromise on the bill. And then both houses will vote on the same version of the bill. And if that passes out, it goes to the governor for his signature. The session lasts 40 legislative days. Legislative days are not real 24-hour days. If they're in session a Tuesday and a Wednesday, that week may be 5 real days, but it's only 2 legislative days. The first day of the session is January 12th. The first week consists of the governor presenting the state of the state. The governor's budget is released. The Chief Justice of the Georgia Supreme Court presents the state of the judiciary. The legislature is in recess the week of January 19th for the joint House Senate budget hearings. And that's where the governor, agency heads, and budget director give presentations. The 28th legislative day is what's called crossover day. Any bill that does not pass out of one of the chambers into the other chamber is dead for session. Although in reality, nothing is dead until the 40th day is done. You can always amend an existing bill, putting on a bill that didn't pass, which happens often. And 40 legislative days generally last until late March or early April. The expectation, in an election year, is it'll end earlier rather than later because legislators cannot raise money while they're in session. The Georgia House has 44 standing committees. The Rules Committee, which is the gatekeeper of all bills that go to the floor. Appropriations writes the budget. Ways and Means does tax legislation. All money bills must go to the House first. The budget starts in the House. The Senate cannot start a tax bill. Ways and Means, the House has to start a tax bill. Then there are, education, higher education, health, examples of other committees. The Senate has 29 standing committees. Again, they have rules, appropriations, works on the budget, finance handles tax legislation that comes over from the House, and then education, youth, health and human services, judiciary, transportation, among others. The budget process, one thing to understand is that the legislature works on 2 budgets at the same time. They're amending the existing budget. And so the budget we're in middle of right now started July 1st, 2025. It ends June 30th, 2026. And the fiscal 27 budget starts July 1st, 2026. So they're working on both budgets at the same time. The process starts with state agencies working over the summer, developing their budget requests. They send out to the governor by September 1st. The governor develops a budget proposal, proposed to the legislature the first week of session, and then the legislative budget process starts. And as you can see, it's a yield round process for developing the budget, which is many chances to have influence on what goes on. The House Appropriations Committee is split into subcommittees. You can see which ones they are. The Senate Appropriations is also into subcommittees. Each subcommittee is responsible for a portion of the budget. They make recommendations to the chair of the Appropriations Committee and the leadership of the House and the Senate, the respective chambers. And then the final budget is put together with the help of the Senate or House Appropriations staff. And so, why we're here today is how can there we go. How can folks influence the budget? What's the actual reality of work down there? And so, there are some things going on right now that I know Mary Margaret wanted to kind of start off with. So I'll hand it off to Mary Margaret to kind of start us off.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you very much to DeKalb Democrats for this invitation. I'm very, very happy to be with you and always accept these invitations to come on and talk directly to folks about how they can get involved. One of the tasks that we have in elective office is figuring out what are the really good ways to communicate with our constituents. I'm going to apologize one time for the dog. I'm throwing, things at the dog, make him stop, but we'll do the best we can. Um, and I'll give you the good news about the benefits of a long career is that you have more opportunities right now to communicate with your legislator and to find out what's going on in the General Assembly that never happened when Al and I began. Something called the World Wide Web says that all of our meetings in the House are public, and they're public via live streamed. All our sessions are live streamed from when we open on Monday morning at 10 o'clock. Almost all, not all of the committee meetings are live streamed. And I know that people go back and look at the film of committee meetings to catch up as to what happened. All of the bills that are filed are online by pretty much by close of business on the day they're filed. And the days where I was standing at a what was maybe called a Xerox machine that time, or a copy machine, and copying bills to mail out to people, all that's over. You have instant access to everything that's filed, and you can watch everything we're doing. That does not mean that there aren't backroom meetings, and that does not mean that things happen that are not in the public, but that your ability to access your representative and your senator expands tremendously. I use this opportunities to say yes to invitations like this because I really want people to use the opportunity you have to contact, know, and follow the person you vote for. I have a Facebook, an Instagram, and a newsletter. And we spend a lot of time on my newsletter telling folks what I'm doing. Outside the session, it's more like once a month or once every few weeks. During the session, it's more like every week or every 10 days. And I always use the newsletter as an opportunity to ask you, constituents, voters, what are you interested in? And how would you vote on particular issues? When I ask people how to vote, it really is encouraging, tremendously encouraging to me that I'll get 400 to 800 people who will vote. And many of you will take the time not only to vote on the Constant Contact device app that I have on my newsletter and Facebook, but you'll also just kind of take the opportunity to email me and say what you think about a particular issue. And I'm going to say right now, my email address is mmo@mmolaw.com. Yeah, I use my law office email instead of the state email, mmo@mmolaw.com. You also can read all of my newsletters. We post them on my website, which is easy to remember, marymargaretoliver.org. And I encourage you, if I'm not your personal representative or senator, I encourage you to find out who you vote for. You probably already know, but I will tell you, over 50%, maybe over 70% of the people who come to me, either in the hall or on the street or make an appointment and come, or maybe a paid lobbyist or may not live in my district, most of them don't know who their representative and senator is. And I will tell you, it's kind of insulting. It's kind of discouraging. It's not insulting. It's discouraging that people don't know when particularly if they're down in the Capitol trying to influence me. I'm always curious, how did you find me? Why me? And do you know who your person is? And does your person have a newsletter? I tell people all the time that, and it's still true, this has been consistent, I would say less than 10% of the people contact me are real live constituents. Most of the people who contact me are lobbyists, and they're good lobbyists, do-gooder lobbyists, or not so good lobbyists, but they're lobbyists. And I'm more interested in the people who have an opportunity to vote for me than anything else. So I really encourage you as strongly as I can, know your representative, know your senator, and send him or her an email soon and find out how he or she wants to communicate with you. Newsletter, Facebook, social media. We have town halls. We have a great town hall at Winona Elementary right before Christmas. Got I don't know, a couple hundred people there. And these internet ways, Zoom type public interactions we have been far more encouraging to me in terms of people's interest. I would say if we have 100 people that come to a town hall, we will have double that watching us online. One of the things I do in my newsletter is tell you what activities are coming up that you might participate in. Where can you go to see people, and where can you show up if you're interested in an issue? So if there's a particular issue, whether or not you live in my district, email me, tell me what you're interested in, tell me what you think I should be working on. I'll tell you right now the things that I'm working on for the 26th session that begins Monday are two major issues that have taken a lot of my time. And they're issues that I think a lot of other people are interested in. And that is one, the Department of Family and Children's Services defects budget that is now $86 million in the hole. The deficit is more extreme than I've ever seen in my long career. The explanation for why we're running that kind of deficit is not totally clear to me. I am on the Human Resources Subcommittee, and so I've spent a lot of time with the chair of that committee. And we had a hearing on December 18th, which you can watch. You can. It was an 8-hour hearing, so you might not want to watch all of it. It was very intense. It was kind of a very difficult hearing because many of the providers who provide services for the foster care population of children, which is about 10,000 children, their contracts had been canceled, terminated, with about 10 days notice, and about 28,000 different kinds of services delivered to these 10,000 children were ending. That's a real catastrophe. It's also in violation of the court of orders that order these services. So we're, I think, in an extremely bad situation right now on that particular budget issue. And I talked about it a little bit just to give you an example of what's going on right now in terms of working up to the General Assembly session beginning on Monday. Representative Lydia Glaze and I, she's a representative on the budget on the Juvenile Justice Committee, have sent a letter to Governor Kemp requesting that he use $8 million of emergency money. So we have $14 billion in the budget to restore these contracts, because it's not only in violation of the law, it's really hurting the children that have already been traumatized by issues of neglect and abandonment. The governor hasn't answered. I have been in contact with the chair of the Appropriations Committee and the chair of my subcommittee, and with whom I believe I have good relationships and who generally answer my emails, and they've gone kind of quiet on this issue right now. So I'm really curious how I know that they're talking about it. I know that they're worried about it, but I haven't seen them do anything yet. So that's something I'm worried. The other major issue I'm working on is housing affordability. And I'm working with the Minority Caucus on a package of bills that we'll be releasing in the next week to deal with a variety of issues. And I can talk about that in detail if you're interested. Alan, I'm going to stop right now and you tell me what we should do next.
Well, I guess we'll almost start from the beginning. You know, how do you come up with ideas for legislation? How do you make decisions on what legislation to actually introduce and champion? And what role can constituents play in developing legislation?
Constituents play a tremendous amount in legislation. I think about my district, which is actually right now different than a little bit different than how you described it. My current district goes south rather than north. My current district goes to Stonecrest. So I have a long banana-shaped district that starts basically at the Emory campus, where I went to Druid Hills High School. It basically starts at Druid Hills High School in my personal home, which is 300 yards from the high school, a quarter of a mile from my high school, and goes south in a long banana down to Stonecrest. So in that district are 3 school districts, 2 independent school districts, City of Atlanta and City of Decatur, and DeKalb County Unincorporated. And in that district, is the high school that has the highest SAT scores in the state of Georgia, which is the city of Decatur. And also in that district are high schools that are very, very much at the other end of no performance that we can brag about. And so I have a district that is three very interesting cities, different cities, Decatur, Stonecrest, and the city of Atlanta. And so I think a lot all the time about what do my cities want from the General Assembly, what do the county want. And we have spent time this fall meeting with all of those political entities that I represent, school boards and county and cities. People come to me with ideas. They come to me with ideas all the time. And I spent an hour on a Zoom yesterday with lawyers who work on community trust issues for Medicaid recipients. It's kind of a in the weeds issue, but they're asking me to prepare a bill that will be more user friendly for the community trust for those that are, I would say, moderate income people that are on Medicaid that may have a little bit of extra resources that can be put into a trust for their benefit. I also have always practiced law in addition to my political job before and after. I was a judge before I got elected, and I was with legal services before I got elected and in private practice. So from my private practice, I've had a lot of experiences that lead me to be interested in issues. I am still I still have no understanding of why we tolerate violence in our society the way we do. We have a very violent society. I had the Friday night session at the magistrate court judge when I was a judge. 2 out of 3 were personal violence issues within families, within acquaintances, within relationships. I've had a client murdered in my law practice, and I was a General Assembly member. I was the primary sponsor of the first bill on stalking. So violence and family disputes and family violence and conflict is a part of my law practice that I really understand and respond to and think about as I walk and go around my world, your world, and our district. So some of those ideas come from my own experience with the governmental systems that we have. But I would say more often than not, somebody, an advocacy group I respect, comes to me. Sometimes I'm assigned a duty. I was very pleased. I was very pleased, very fortunate to be named by then Speaker David Ralston, who unfortunately passed away, on to be his what he called me and Todd Jones, who is the Republican. He appointed a Republican and me, Todd Jones and me, to be what he called his co-pilot to prepare and bring to the General Assembly a bill 1013 that was passed in 2022 on mental health reform. The origin of that bill not only began with David Ralston, the speaker, but it began with lots of different mental health reform-minded people, like then Kevin Tanner, former legislator who has become commissioner of behavioral health, folks that know the Georgia mental health system is weak, and needs help. And we have been now in our 4th year of efforts to bring that reform forward. So I was given that assignment, happily given that assignment, happy to work on that important issue. That's a long answer, Alan. It tells you it comes from a variety of ways, but I'm very interested in what people want from the General Assembly.
Republicans, rely on a national organization, an organization like ALEC, that writes bills, which appear, similar in legislatures across the country. Do Democrats have something similar? And if not, what can we do about that? Is there a Democratic version of ALEC?
Yeah, there are national groups, national Democrat groups, national progressive groups that are preparing legislation. The Carter Center is very, very active in national advocacy. That's just one example of a national group that influences me. Of course, Emory University has been in my district from the beginning until now. Throughout time, always been a constituent, and the Carter Center and the Emory Healthcare Center, which is a $20 billion constituent, has always been part of one networking with other kind of progressive groups that want reforms, legislative reforms. So there are national groups. It's Georgia's, every one of the 50 states is unique one way or another. So national bills aren't always useful. AARP has been a good example of a national organization that's brought forth reforms on powers of attorney, for instance. So there are lots of examples like that. They tend to come from issue orientation. I don't get a package from the state Democratic Party. I don't get a package from the National Democratic Party, but I am influenced and I'm helped by national issue groups that are on the progressive side, who are more likely to be supported by Democrats.
Um, it's always you've been both in the majority and the minority, and obviously it's much easier and more fun being in the majority than being in the
Right.
minority. And sometimes it seems the minority party has very little power control in the state legislature. Yet sometimes Democratic bills get through, and you're a great example of that. The mental health parity bill, and you've had some great success as a minority legislator getting bills through. What are the keys to getting Democratic bills through when Republicans control the legislature?
That's a
Um, you
great
know,
question, because there are many of us Democrats that walk down there and assume that we're a full member of the General Assembly and act like we're a full member of the General Assembly. And we are sometimes successful, not in the percentage that I want, not in the percentage that Georgia voters want, and not in the percentage that we should be successful. But I think it's based on work ethic, one, work ethic, work ethic, work ethic. And two, it's based on a set of relationships that you can develop quickly or you can develop over time. Amani Burns is she's in her, she was just elected this big in her second term just now. And reapportionment gave her a number of different precincts from my older district. And she's been tremendously successful as a freshman in adopting the issue of children's school lunches. And I have a lot of admiration for her. She's just been got some National Rising Star Award just recently. She came in with an identified issue. She developed relationships with the appropriations. She said every child that goes to school should get lunch, whether or not his or her parent paid for it. And there's been an identified number, dollars number that represents the gaps of children whose lunches hadn't been paid for. And she, in a bipartisan way, has been successful in getting the budget to include that that it's $6 to $14 million, that kind of range in the budget each year. A freshman came in, was successful with that budget issue. It made the Republicans look good to be bipartisan on that. The Republicans look bad, telling, this child you can't eat, and this child you're going to get a cheese sandwich or whatever bad image it was. So it was in their interest to cooperate. I have relationships with not all, some of the Republican leaders. I had a real good relationship with David Ralston because he and I had served in the Senate together. When the Democrats were in charge, he was on my committee as a minority party member of the Republican Senate at that time. And so we had many years to develop a relationship. People will know how you work, know how you use the press in a good way, how you use the press in a bad way, and they'll know your good and bad points. Everybody walking the planet has good and bad points, and you got to figure out what good points you have in your what makes you up that you can use to develop the kind of relationship and opportunities to pass legislation. It's different for all individuals. It's different is daily basis. One of the things that I say to people in politics, you've got to be comfortable with uncertainty. You've got to be comfortable with not knowing what the odds are. You've got to be comfortable with not knowing whether you're going to have a chance to participate. But if you assume that you have an idea that's worth discussing, it's a mistake to just assume you can't do anything.
Let's talk a little bit about the committee process. Um, there's a, you know, a lot of times in committees, votes aren't, you don't know who voted for what. Is there a way to force Republicans to go on the record, to actually take, vote, um, accountable votes in committees? Sometimes it's frustrating that, things magically appear at a committee and, no one's fingerprints necessarily are on it. Is there a way of the minority party to help force that issue?
That's a great question. I've chaired judiciary in the Senate. I've chaired the judiciary in the House, and I've watched chairs do good and bad things over a long career. The chair of a committee has an enormous amount of power. She sets the agenda. She changes agenda, and our rules do not require that you get any specific notice of what's on the agenda. They do not require that you do any. When I say it, the written rules do. Some chairmen say that we will always have a hearing only on a bill before we'll take a vote. In other words, you'll have notice that a bill is going to be discussed, won't be voted on, so you'll have two chances to know what's going on and to get there. Putting the TV cameras on the committee process which is universally true in the House, is not universally true in the Senate. I can't keep up with their rules particularly, but is very, very helpful. But there is no rule that requires a recorded vote. We do, when we have a voice vote, people can say, recorded vote, please, and the chairman usually will grant that. What's put on our desk every beginning of every session. I'll be interested if, at the beginning of every 2-year session, I'll be interested if it will put on our desk for Monday for a vote on new rules that we've never seen before. That's a way that the majority party maintains power, is that they set the rules and they have enough votes to pass it, and they don't care that you see it before. I don't know how Georgia is in the range of all this transparency or notice. We might be towards the bottom or the middle. I don't know. But right now, the majority party Republicans have not seen fit to mandate disclosure of all votes, have not seen fit to mandate notice of hearings. 6 hours would be good of a document that's put for a vote before the House. We do have the budget has to be on the desk for an hour. Bills have to be on the desk for the floor votes for an hour. And on day 40, if any of you have never been there on day 40, you will see that many, many, many different votes are with 1 hour notice of a bill that may or may not have ever seen the light of day before 10:30 on signing time.
Then you talked a little about this earlier, on what kind of your priorities are for session. But what do you think will be the biggest legislative and budgetary issues during the upcoming session? What do you think is going to drive the session this year?
I think from Burt Jones' perspective, what's going to drive the discussion is his opportunity to run for governor. I think about a third of the Senate is running for another office. I can't be too critical of that because when I was Senate, I was running for another office. There was about a third. When I ran for a statewide office, when I was in the Senate, there were 5 of us in the state Senate who were running for lieutenant governor, and I was one of them. So that's not unusual. This year that the Attorney General, the Lieutenant Governor, and the Governor's office all have candidates from the state Senate. That's not unusual. That's a pattern. And it's more a pattern of the Senate than the House. The Republican message that's coming out from, I would say, the public message that's coming out from the Republicans is that we're going to be concerned about cutting income tax, eliminating income tax. It's messaging bills that align with the political strategies of the Republican candidates running for a variety of offices. The reality is that every year the most important thing we do is the budget. every year, it's the most important thing we do at the budget. And it will
It's
be the
the only
most,
constitutionally required bill that needs to pass.
it's the only thing we have to do. The opportunity to participate in the budget process has become a little more open than it was historically. There is a budget process related to hearings that I think is improving, not not where I would want it to be, but it's improving, and it's the most important thing we do. I think that this example of this $86 million deficit, which is a lot of money, for the children, foster care children of Georgia, where we have 100%, we're responsible, we're the parent, we're responsible. If you take a child away from a parent's and put it in foster care, you can assume damage and trauma and injury. And we are responsible for, constitutionally, for returning that child to the parent, for statutorily showing to a judge that we're making reasonable efforts to return that child to a parent. And when we fail to do that, the damage to that child is enormous. So I'm curious, this is just an example, what's going to be the public acknowledgement from the majority party, that Republicans, that we have denied 28,000 services to foster care children, most of those services being court ordered based on our statutory duties. I'm curious about that. That's an example. I don't think that Burt Jones is going to be successful in eliminating the income tax, but it is going to generate, as it does every year, we talk about the income tax as being something that's bad from the Republican perspective. It's going to generate a discussion about property taxes. And the House defense to the House is seen as a more moderate body than the Senate right now, which is accurate. The House is going to be talking about property tax reform, and I've got ideas about that. I mean, the Democrats have ideas about what to do about property tax reform. That's going to be important. The budget, property taxes. How are we going to deal with what everybody recognizes is a housing affordability crisis? ARC, Atlanta Regional Commission, in its survey, 27 counties, extensive survey, said that housing affordability is the number one issue facing voters. I think that's true. I think it ranks way ahead of crime or way ahead of taxes or what. The inability of people to buy houses, to stay in houses, to be a tenant whose property is maintained according to the law, all of that is really bad right now. We between 160 and 250,000 gaps in opportunities to have housing for middle income or low income people. We have a supply deficit, and we have a demand, and it's not working out. So I'm curious about these major issues of taxation, which are important every year, budget important every year. And this year, I think housing is going to take a more front row position. I'm curious whether Burt Jones and his will be continuing to spend time on what we call the culture war issues. Do they think that that's politically beneficial to them? It doesn't look politically beneficial to me, but I don't talk to their political guru people, so I can't tell you what they're going to do about that.
I'm curious on your opinion on the whole data center issue. And is that something the General Assembly will take up this year, or is that kind of a local thing at this point?
It's not a local thing. It's too big a deal to be a local thing. And Burt Jones, as you know, speaking of Burt Jones, in Butts County, is a gazillion dollars of investment going there. I can't be more precise than that. It's like about data center development in that region of Butts County between Atlanta and Macon. It's a huge development, a huge investment. The data center issue is going to be front and center because of the public awareness that influenced the public service successful race for the Democratic candidates, influenced positively for the Democrats. there's a bill, I think the number is 578. I'm a co-sponsor that is sponsored by Debbie Buckner. She's done a really good job of setting out the procedure. If you want to bring a data center to Butts County, you've got to disclose all these things, including how much water you're going to use, including how it's going to impact the water table, including how much energy it's going to generate, including how much incentives you're giving to the developer. That bill is interesting to watch. The House, not the General Assembly, the House created a special resource committee chaired by Brad Thomas, who is from Cherokee County. And Data Center Bill, the 578 bill, is in that committee. And I have been talking about it. I'm talking about it right now. It's something that I'm watching with interest because I think bipartisan elected people are feeling the heat on the interest of data centers because of the way it impacts our water table.
Do you think getting back to the budget for a sec? There's I guess it's still I guess we'll have a better idea once the governor proposes budget on what potential impact federal budget cuts may have. The $80 million plus deficit and defects that you're talking about. We have I don't know, I forget what the last number is, a 12 billion, $14 billion, I mean, a really multi-billion dollar surplus. Do you think there's any chance do you think the governor has a plan for that at all?
No. Well, let me back up. I don't know what the governor's plan is. Obviously he's not sharing it with Mary Margaret, or Democrats or anybody at this point, as far as I know. He releases his budget, and I'm pretty confident in educated guessing, that he's going to offer another tax cut of some kind. And I don't know what it's going to be. We have a staged reduction of the income tax, but we don't have an elimination of the income tax. So I'm curious about what tax reform, in his view, he offers. The the leadership of Matt Hatchett, who is a chairman of the appropriations in the House, and who I work with a lot, and who I respect and I have a relationship with, he says we cannot expect the state to replace all federal money. Georgia is not going to use, my educated guess is, it's $14 to $15 billion of reserves to replace the refugee program. Matt Hatchett says what we're going to be most concerned about is where we partner with the feds. And what he's talking about is Medicaid. That's what he's talking about. And that is what he is worried about most. One of the reasons that we don't have clarity about what the Republicans want to do, because it basically is that they don't want to tell us they want to do, but really, we don't know what the feds are going to do. I know that a guy I respect, Jack Harden, who does a lot, he's a fancy law firm guy, but he's been active in leadership issues of homelessness. He says that the HUD budget's going to be cut 43%. The homeless money, Georgia's services to homeless, is paid for by the feds. It's not paid for by DeKalb County or City. It's really all federal money. All of the housing voucher money that we use for disabled people, or drug abuse issues, or people who just need housing financial support, it's all federal money. Georgia does close to nothing except under the civil rights, mental health placement of people in communities. So we don't know how much of that's really going to be cut. Because we can't believe anything President Trump says. I can't believe, well, you may believe, I don't believe anything he says. And the budget issues are really unpredictable. I've said publicly many times, this is the most unpredictable time ever in my long political career. And you can use the tariffs as an example. It changes every day. It affects our economy every day. And you can't trust anything they say.
There's a couple of questions from folks who are on the call. One of them, the guy says somebody probably from North Georgia, wanted to know, what the state leadership can do to help Democratic candidates in in more bluish areas in places like North Georgia, places like South Georgia. How does how can we become a statewide more of a statewide party than the kind of the metro areas that we tend to dominate at the moment to become a truly majority party?
That's a really good question. You know, we on the House side recognize that the House is closer to taking the majority position than the Senate is. And as we pick up the seats like we did last month in Oconee County, we get more excited. There's one of the political groups that's come is the Fighting 50. I really like this group. It's formed by a couple of friends of mine, both of whom live in my district, and they are picking out and encouraging and finding and supporting Democratic counties in very Republican areas. They want those Republican safe, quote unquote, thought of safe districts to have Democratic opponents, because what it does is it generates more votes. And, Joe
Statewide
Biden won
elections.
by 11,780 votes. Well, there was a House district in very Republican North Georgia district where the Democrat picked up 2,000 more votes than anybody had ever come out of that county with. That's 20% over Biden's victory. And they have found these candidates in these Republican areas that also help educate and encourage those Democrats in those counties. A county won by Donald Trump is 65% is viewed as a quote unquote safe Republican county, but that means that there are 35% of Democrats who are waiting for somebody to come excite them and vote for them. And that's kind of what was happening over in Coney County. That was a 60-40 district, Republican won, that got won by a Democrat last month because people were paying attention and showing up. The state party understands that there are Democrats out there in rural Georgia, and that unless we begin to really recognize that and encourage those folks to feel hopeful about opportunities for democratic principles to be discussed, we're not going to be as successful as we can be. So this particular Democratic state leadership under Charlie Bailey is really showing up for the House in our effort to become the majority. I have seen a really good change, a positive change in terms of his ability to raise money and come to those of us that are really working on taking over the House.
Another question, actually, it's a kind of another budget question. Is there been, well, kind of budget, has there been any, do you think there'll be any action discussion? I know it's something that has been discussed ad nauseum for the 30 years that I've been involved in the General Assembly about finally updating and modernizing the QBE education funding formula. Is that just a dead letter, or will there ever be some real movement to that?
There has to be some real movement on it. And I would guess not in 2026, but you're right. It's in a very painful thing. And the appropriations have changed outside the QBE formula that shows some like the giving the millions of dollars for free food. That's not in the QBE formula, but it's an example of we got to be a little bit more sensitive. The issue of Georgia not measuring poverty for distribution of education money is a real big red flag right now in the education community. That's always been part of the reform efforts in a QBE realignment. So I'm watching all that. I think we're moving in that direction. The APEX program that the Georgia General Assembly's put in $20 million extra for mental health services for children in schools is an example of how we're dancing around the QBE formula. I mean, we sometimes will change the appropriations for school counselors or school social workers, but putting $20 million extra into the Apex mental health programs is another way, another strategy, not talking about QBE. It's been very disheartening to see all of that effort go into discussions about improving the QBE formula and not see a product. I see some progress around the edges outside the QBE formula. And I know that people recognize we need reform. The Republicans, I'll tell you what bugs me more than anything is the Republicans don't want to do anything. They have power, but what do they want to do with it besides cut taxes? We understand and give money to Rivian. I mean, we really don't have a decent. We don't have a good enough leadership that is specific enough for reform to help the well-being of Georgia's families that are on the edge. That's my biggest complaint. They don't want to do enough.
Related to that, another question, it's something I don't expect would come out of a Republican-led session, but I was wondering if it was something that the Democrats caucuses may stress, is the idea of family leave and paid sick leave for Georgia workers.
We got a little family leave 2 years ago. That was a big uphill fight. That was a real victory, and it was a bipartisan victory.
How did that come about?
A whole lot of work. And Butch Miller, who I forget what his position was, but a prominent Republican, was willing to take it on. And Georgia was so out of line with all that. And then there was another bill that Jan Jones offered 2 years ago, I think, that expanded some of the sick leave thing. I'm not sure I'm remembering all that correctly. So those have been issues that we've seen a little progress.
I'm interested in, because I think it's an important lesson for for constituents to understand, but also for newer legislators to understand. And it's kind of going back to we talked about a little bit earlier about the success that you've had and how a minority legislator can influence legislation. And what what expectations constituents should have on it's there is almost not conflict, but working with your Republican counterparts and making a lot of political noise that annoy your Republican counterparts. How you balance all of that to be effective. I mean, you can't. It's a political atmosphere, obviously, and the idea is to defeat them to become the majority party. But at the same time, you need to get anything done, you need to work with them. So how, we'll talk a little bit about how you balance that, being the political animal that you obviously are, to be where you've been for 3 decades, but to be successful as you've been being in the minority.
We have a very active, robust discussion going on now. Do you be more aggressive or do you be more moderate? I mean, that's a simplistic way of saying it. I think that, again, we are an incredibly diverse crowd of people. I have worked full-time in 3 different cultures. I've worked in a traditional law firm litigation culture. I've worked in a full-time in an academic culture, teaching at law schools, and I've worked in a political culture. The political culture is different. The diversity, I don't mean only black and white diversity. I mean age, education, personal habits. I mean, there is no equivalent. There's no way that you could show up drunk, mean, and start a fight with somebody physically at Home Depot or at a law school and be employed the next day. But in the Georgia General Assembly, the diversity of our behaviors creates opportunities and barriers. There are no permanent friends. There are no permanent enemies. The alignments are opportunistic and timely and can be utilized based on relationships, based on shared interest, based on things that you can't predict. It's being able to respond in an unpredictable environment with some flexibility and some quickness and some work ethic. for me personally, in wherever my little cog is in this 180 people in the House, having been a practicing attorney for a very long time at a time where I was the only woman lawyer in the House or the Senate, gave me a whole lot of early advantages. I'm used to managing conflict. I'm used to managing conflict in a world where there are rules, and there's somebody in charge like a judge, and but that has been a real advantage to me. Secondly, it's an advantage to me is that I'm impatient and I'm not going to waste my time. I'm not going to go down there just to hang out. There are people who go down there because it's kind of like a frat house and they think it's fun. Um, it can occasionally be fun, but it's not. That's not why I'm
It's not
going
that
down
much
there.
fun.
It's not that much fun. So, um, so the variety of people down there really creates variety of opportunities. Who are you that would have an interest with, Joe Blow over there? What is your commonality? And I'll tell you, it's always a surprise to me. It's almost always a surprise when I find a commonality. Sometimes it's they are care about our environmental issues of the river just because their granddaddy took them fishing. You cannot predict 100% how they're going to respond to something. The housing issues are a good example of that. They want to make money as a developer or a home builder or a landlord, but that means that they don't want these out-of-state investors. The bill I was successful in passing last year, 399, said if you're an out-of-state investor buying houses to rent in Georgia, you got to had some things that they had to do to come into Georgia. And our housing package is probably going to continue some of those issues. There are opportunities for commonality of issues, and the diversity of the personality gives you opportunities. That's the good news. The bad news is that the Republicans are disciplined. They are all alike. There are no black people. It's a white. They have one or two Hispanics, well, I think, but it's not a diverse crowd of people, and they're very disciplined. They do what they're told. They do what they're told. They go to the trouble to get elected, but then don't act anything independently. But occasionally, they don't do what they're told, or occasionally, in order for the good of the body, they're allowed to do something. And that's where you got to find your opportunities.
Well, this has been great. I really appreciate your time. I've gotten a lot out of it, and I hope everyone else has. Let
Well,
me
I'm sorry about the dog. I'm sorry about the
no,
dog. He
actually it was
finally got
fine.
tired and went to sleep.
Um, okay, let me get back to this for a second.
Let me say one more thing. How can the general public, if I may say this, please come down and visit us. There's nothing like coming down to see it. If you've never been to the Capitol, find out who your representative is, find out who your senator is, and send him, her an email or a text or a message or whatever, and say, I'm coming down to visit. I look forward to saying hello to you. Introduce yourself. It's it's
Well,
it's a fun place to be some days.
let me encourage everyone. There's several organizations that will be very useful if you're not familiar with them, to keep you informed of what's going on down at the Capitol. The Georgia Budget and Policy Institute is a great resources for tax and budget issues.
Mhm.
Jordans for Healthy Future is a kind of wonderful resource for healthcare. Voices for Georgia's Children is a great resource for children's issues, children's healthcare issues. Each of them, if you go to their website and get on their listserv, will keep you informed during session. I have no financial relationship with them anymore. But I'd encourage you to use them. And actually, if you want to donate money to them, I'm sure they'd accept that too. But they're wonderful resources. The Cobb County Dems have a urgent action network. You can sign up to receive emails when it's a large public response to issues and rapidly developing events. And there's two upcoming DeKalb Dem events. The general meeting this Thursday at 7 o'clock, and there's a gubernatorial forum Thursday, February 19th, and be in person and streamed. Um, there we go. It's frozen for a second. So if there's any other closing remarks you want to make, Representative Oliver?
I'm looking at the questions. There are a lot of good questions that have come from you,
Yeah,
and
I tried to hit a bunch of, I mean, if there's any other ones you want to respond to, I tried to hit a bunch of them, but there's more than I could have got to.
do folks meet with your staff in person? My chief of staff is Caroline Herring. She's at the Capitol when we're in session. We meet with people all the time. She meets with them. I meet with them. We meet with them together. You would be surprised how seldomly a real live constituent wants to meet with a real live representative and senator. It's almost always, it's not always, but it's more the majority of the time it's a lobbyist. Take advantage of the opportunity to find your person. She may have staff, may not have staff, but please reach out to him or her. Any question you want me to answer, Alan?
I hit the ones that I thought. Actually, there's one question that came. It was one of the first questions there, and I wasn't sure of the answer. And that's if a governor doesn't sign or veto a bill after 40 days, it
It
becomes
becomes
law,
law.
correct?
It
Yeah, that's
becomes
what I
law.
thought. Yeah, that was the first question. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Um, but if there's any of here that I think Representative Oliver is frozen. So on that note, thanks everyone for listening in.
But says
Do
she won't meet with me. And I think you've got to be persistent about making an opportunity to meet with your person, even if they don't want to meet with you. And if they don't want to meet with you, send it in writing. I'm sorry you wouldn't meet with me.
Okay. And if there's nothing else, we'll end it here. And again, thanks everyone. Be involved. There's lots of ways to be informed. Contact your legislator. If you don't know who your legislator is, you can go to the Secretary of State's website, and you can you put in the address, you could find out, because it's they do pay attention. I was staff to Senator Hooks back in the day, and his office secretary used to, as phone calls came in, they'd log what people thought, and if it was a lobbyist or not constituent, it wouldn't matter as much as a constituent. So if
Right.
you let your legislator know what you think, they do care.
And sign
Um,
up for my newsletter, please.
yeah, yeah, that's another great way of staying informed. So thank you all very much. Have a great night.
You know.